Hello everyone, this short video is about getting the length and bearing for a property boundary or your site area for your base plan that you will be creating uh, for your permaculture design as part of the permaculture design course. The method I'm going to show you is simply one method. There's lots of different ways you can do this, um, but I'm going to show you a method which I think is pretty simple and accessible, particularly if you live in the state of Queensland. So first of all, I'm going to share screen, and I'm going to go into the QGlobe or Queensland Globe website. So if I just type in QGlobe, so look at that. So Queensland Globe. So Queensland Globe is a repository of geographical information for the state of Queensland. A whole lot of different information in here. You can pick up information about waterways, roads, contours, fauna and flora, ecological information, a whole lot of different stuff. And it's a very useful site that we can use in our permaculture work to get base information. But today I'm just going to use it for um, helping us to create our base plan. Okay, so this is the first page that'll come up. You might actually get asked to tick a box to agree to the terms of service when you first log into Queensland Globe. Just tick that box, and then you'll get into the service. You can scroll down and drill down more accurately, zoom right in using the roller on your mouse. Um, and you can track around by right clicking or left clicking, I should say, on the mouse. So I can roll right in, zoom right into Brisbane, and we can get right down to the property level that way. So there we go. I think I'm probably looking at a school or something like that there, and across the road. Oh, let's get rid of that. Uh, houses. Um, But the other way we can do this is if we go over to the left-hand side, top left, click on search and type in the place that we're working on. So if I was to type in the address, the official address for Northey Street, which is actually 16 Victoria Street in Windsor, and I hit enter. And there you go. It's actually said 16 Victoria Street is actually 54 Northey Street. Click on that, and you'll see the dot in the center of the screen there. If I drill down, and there we have Northey Street. We've found that fairly quickly. Now we could do some measurements of Northey Street, but I think it'd be a bit more interesting for you guys if we just go to a real life backyard. So I'm just going to scroll up here and to Cullen Street, and I thought I'd have a look at this particular property here. So you can see, actually, what I'll do is I'll just reduce down that search tool. I'll click back on at the left-hand side of the screen. If I click in there, it just gets rid of that. So you can see on this property here in the center of the screen, the house, you can see part of the fence. You might be able to see part of the fence line on the road, but a lot of that property is actually obscured by vegetation. So it's very difficult to know where the property boundary actually is. So what we can do is call up the cadastre layers or the property boundary layers in this QGlobe system. And if I go over to the left-hand side again and I click on layers, click in there, and then I click on add add layers. So click that little plus sign and you'll see all the different layers that you can call up in QGlobe. It's quite an amazing geographical system. Um, Lots of great spatial information on it. But what we want to do for the purposes of this exercise is drill down into the planning cadastre layer. So cadastre is an old survey word, surveying, it comes from the profession of surveying. It's all about property boundaries and the legal boundaries of the land in the Western land use system. Okay, so I've clicked on that little arrow and I've gone into some sub layers. And if I scroll down, there's a layer here called land parcels. And you'll see there's another little arrow here. So there's more layers underneath land parcels. Okay, and then I'm just going to scroll down a little bit more and I'm going to click on this land parcel layer. I click on that and it'll take a little while to fire up. I click on that and magically the property boundaries appear on the map. Now, there's a couple of things to say about the accuracy of those boundaries. They will be dimensionally fairly accurate, but they might not be appearing on the aerial survey completely accurately. And that's mainly due to a problem called parallax error, where we're trying to plot two-dimensional lines onto a curved surface, which has been photographed by a plane. So we get this parallax error. Don't worry too much about that. For our purposes, it's fine. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to click on this layers icon again, just to reduce that back for us. And you can see the property boundary layers sitting above the vegetation, which is really handy for us. Okay. The other thing to say about this image that we're looking at is I can't see the whole property, so I won't be able to measure the lines for the whole property at the bottom of the screen. So what I want to do is actually um, zoom out. Now, if I use my roller on my mouse, I zoom out too far to make accurate measurement. But there's a little scale tool at the bottom left of the screen here. So if you can see where I'm got my cursor, and I'm just making little circular movements here at the bottom left, you'll see there's a scale tool, and I can actually type in a scale that I would like to use. So at the moment, the scale is 1:1011, obviously a non-standard scale. Now, a standard scale could be 1:500. Scale doesn't really matter for the purpose of this exercise, but it's good to note that there are standard scales. It's very important to know this when you're actually coming to plot your base plan on paper. And so that I typed in 1:500, and that's getting more accurate for us. I'm going to see if I can get a little bit more accurate by typing in a non-standard scale, 1:400. So that's pretty good. And we can measure off that. So I can see the whole property on the screen and I can measure off that. So how do I do the measurement? So in the top right of screen, there's an icon with a little spanner in it. So that's the icon for the measurement tools. And if I click on that, there's a whole lot of little tools in here that we can use. And one of them is the measurement tool. So I click on measurement and you've got options of measuring lines or measuring areas. So what I want to do is measure lines, okay? And I want to get my units right. So there's a whole lot of options here. But the option I want to use is meters. So a standard convention, I guess, in landscape architecture or landscaping for this sort of scale of work that we're doing is to measure in meters. If we're doing very accurate work, we need for construction, we're doing any building work, we're building walls or a swimming pool, for example, we want to get a lot more accurate. We want to get down to millimeter accuracy. But for our purposes today, we just want to use meters. And in fact, in QGlobe, you don't get too many options. So you just want to use meters. And you'll see the little crosshairs here. So I'm going to place that crosshair in the corner of that property boundary, and I'm going to click on that, and then I'm just going to measure down to that point there. Before I click on that, I'm just going to show you there's a couple of figures coming up here, the length and the bearing. The length has also been shown on the line. So we can say that the measurement of that site is 40.25 and the bearing is 189 degrees, 190 degrees. Now, bear in mind that we don't have to be super accurate with our measurement for this sort of stuff. If you're out by half a meter or 0.3 of a meter, that's okay for this sort of work, right? So we want to just come down into there, measure that. And yeah, so that was our first measurement. I'll do that again, get a bit more accurate this time, if we can. 40.31 at a bearing of 188. I double click into that, and that's our measurement. And I can move the cursor around, so 40.2. Pretty standard surveying back in the day in old parts of Brisbane was two chains. Two chains is 40 meters. So yeah, it's probably probably more like 40 meters, that dimension. And you can round off to the nearest half a meter. So I'd be going with 40 meters. And then we can take a new measurement. Just click on that new measurement bar there to get the other dimension. And it's 19.98 with a bearing of about 99 degrees. So bring that across a little bit, double click. And there we've got it. It's about 20 meters. And that's accurate enough for our purposes in a permaculture design course. So there you go. There you have it. That's how we can pick up some basic dimensions for our property boundaries for a suburban property. Okay, so what if you've got a rural property where you don't have property boundaries, or you do have property boundaries, but they're way out at the farm scale. So if we zoom right out and we go out to a rural property, perhaps, let's go out west. Let's go down to Glamorgan Vale. Out west, Glamorgan Vale on Black Snake Gully, which flows into the Brisbane River. And so we're working on this property here. As you can see, there's no property boundaries, except perhaps right out at the edge of the farm. So that might be not an area that we're working with. We might just be working around the housing. What do we do? So I just want to set a good scale. I think perhaps 1:500 could work. That could work. And the area I'm going to work with in this case is going to be around the fence line of this property. And as you can see, the fence line sort of disappears up around this tree. We don't seem to have a fence line, or it's not very obvious. Maybe it's a low fence, but I can certainly see the area that's rough pasture grass and an area that's mowed. So that's notionally going to be the extent of my site that I'm working with. And if I just scroll and pan around a little bit, I can fit the whole site in as that one is to 500. And I can do the same measurements again. Okay, I can measure the fence line. Now, there may well be a little bit of parallax error going on here, but it's not too much to worry about. Just make sure you measure the fence, not the shadow of the fence. And so there you go, 45 meters at a bearing of 273 degrees. So you want to be recording all of this as you're measuring, pen and paper. I click on that, and there's my first measurement. Okay, 42.45, so 42 and a half meters at a bearing of 273. Okay, I can do a new measurement. And I can take that one there. I can just do a single click instead of a double click. Take that measurement. And then I can keep on going. Measure up there. Before I click, I can just take the length shown for the segment. And I can keep on going. And that's about roughly it there. So that segment length is about 37 meters. And there's another little segment here, 7.7 meters at that bearing. So as you're going, you're writing all this down on a piece of paper, okay? Actually, that's pretty straight. I'm going to go to about that point in there. I'm going to come down to that length. So I'm writing all this down. So this little length here is about 4.5 meters, bearing of 170, about bearing of 227 degrees. And I can finish up if I like. Last one, 40 is about 43 meters at a bearing of 274 degrees. And if I double click on there, they're my measured lengths. It has a total circumference of 215 meters, which has been displayed in the center of the screen there. So that's another way of doing the measurement where you don't have access to property boundaries. Now, if you've got a lot of trees over that property, and there's no property cadastre line showing where the property boundary is, you'll have to take some guesses. Really, that's about the only way you can do it. But perhaps a little bit of ground truthing, actually walking out on site with a tape measure and making sure that what's been displayed on the screen here today matches up with fairly closely with what you're actually measuring up on site. And I might do another little video about that soon. Okay, guys, so there you have it. That's how we pick up measurements for our site boundaries.